We are Group 3 and we're doing a presentation on beauty standards, influencers and advertisement. Influencers on social media form relationships with their followers by sharing their day-to-day life. That's problematic when it comes to paid endorsement, where the influencer gets paid to promote a product or a company. So the line between genuine and bought opinions have been blurred, which leads to a questioning of the ethics in it. In 2019, the YouTuber Bloggilates analyzed the top 100 most followed women on Instagram to find an influencer beauty standard. She found some categories which most of them fit into. A white 22-year-old with dark hair and eyes, an hourglass figure and big lips. Since all of us are around the age of this ideal influencer and active on social media, we were interested in seeing how influencers and advertisement affect the beauty standards of today. Considering this topic, we expected to get answers from young people mostly.
The data, as you can see, we obtained answers from 140 individuals. The observations were very concentrated in the age range 15 to 25, the gender category women, and the leftist end of the political spectrum. This makes the dataset non-representative on a population level and makes our possibilities to draw general conclusions more difficult. So we shall treat these results as more of a service of our acquaintances rather than an in-depth analysis of the population's general behavior. Following, we will explain the variables we found the most relevant to our topic. The first variable is age. Our sample group only includes ages 15 to 26 because anyone aged 27 or above is considered an outlier, so we worked with only 128 observations. Gender. As you can see, most of the observations were women, then men, and only 2 observations were non-binary people. Country of origin. We had observations from 17 different countries, but most of them were from Spain, followed by Argentina and Sweden. For the rest of the countries, we had only 1 or 2 observations. Country of residence. 89% of the population lives in European countries, most of them in Spain. The remaining percentage represents the individuals living outside Europe, making all responses Western skew. And the last variable of our demographic data is the political spectrum. As you can see, the predominant side is the left, followed by the right wing and the radical center.
In the question, a type of beauty promoted by influencers, the most frequent answer was skinny or fit people, followed by normative bodies and culturally diverse people. In general, there was a tendency toward bodies that featured characteristics socially favored. Groups that belong to marginalized people, such as big-sized or black people, represent a very low proportion. Next, for the opinion and involuntary influence of advertisement, most observations were high, with a median and mode of 8, a high likelihood of being involuntarily influenced. The mean and the standard deviation, however, show a spread-out dataset. The time spent on appearance per week has a model class of 1 to 3 hours, while 54% spent up to 6 hours per week on their appearance. The next question, money spent on image, has a mean of 50 and a median of 20, which shows a highly skewed positive dataset and a wide range of values. However, with such a high third quartile and maximum RQR, we see that most observations actually have a lower value. Finally, for the number of influencers followed, most observations are concentrated between 0 and 50. However, the sample is positively skewed due to some extreme high values, which make up for a very low percentage and generate some outliers.
Hypothesis A. The younger you are, the more influenced you are by the influencers that you follow on social media. To confirm this, we computed the relationship between 2 numerical variables, age and likelihood of involuntary influence. We saw that there was a weak negative relationship, meaning that the older age groups of our sample think that they are less likely to be involuntarily influenced by social media. This could be explained by the fact that they have less presence in social platforms. To prove the explanation behind this reasoning, we use a third variable, taking into account Simpson's paradox. We calculated the relationship between 2 numerical variables, age and number of influencers followed, both with and without the age outliers, to see if the older ages made any difference in the relationship. The relationship between the variables was positively correlated when excluding the outliers. However, when outliers were included, we could appreciate a negative relationship. This would mean that, according to Simpson's paradox, the believed likelihood of being involuntarily influenced in social media is higher in the younger age groups because they follow more influencers. Hypothesis B. The more influencers you follow, the more money you spend on your appearance. We base this hypothesis on the belief that influencers promote a type of beauty which leads you to adopt a certain consumption behavior. To prove this, we cross the numerical variables number of influencers followed with variable money spent on appearance. Then, we check this relationship in relation to each gender to see if there was a difference in behavior between men, women, and non-binary, and we created 3 separate scatter plots. In the first scatterplot, which includes all genders, the money spent on appearance had a positive relationship with the amount of influencers followed, although quite a weak one. Furthermore, the coefficient of determination tells us that the regression line does not have a good fit, which is quite clear when looking at the scatterplot, as there are a few high values that escape the data. This becomes even more clear when looking at the scatterplot divided by gender. The male category has most of its values concentrated in the lower end of both X and Y axis, and in the case of women, the regression line is more adjusted to the general one, which shows a weak positive correlation. Thus, we do see that gender influences the amount of money one spends in relation to the amount of influencers one follows. Once again, in line with Simpson's paradox.
Hypothesis C. Your country of origin does not affect your conception of beauty. We believe that the conception of beauty has been globalized with the help of the internet. The observations show how the main beauty standards promoted by influencers are skinny, normative bodies, and then culturally diverse people. Now, we're going to take the most relevant countries and compare each with them with the general population. First, for Argentinians, the main type of beauty standard is skinny and normative bodies. For Spain, the main beauty types are also skinny and normative bodies, as well as other. For Sweden, it's skinny people, normative bodies, and culturally diverse people. Furthermore, the Kramer V is 0.23, which shows a small relationship between the country of origin and the main type of beauty standard, helping in confirming our thesis. There exists a general tendency towards certain beauty standards that are widespread and prevalent in the global society, no matter the country of origin. However, our relatively small sample mostly gathers first world countries, which all show the same tendencies in the domain of beauty. Hypothesis D. To study the involuntary influence, we used likelihood of involuntary influence, and for the voluntary influence, we took barter product promoted by an influencer, then crossed each variable with the number of influencers followed. We can appreciate a positive weak relationship, with only 3 observations that have a number of following influencers surpassing 100, which makes it complicated to create a reliable regression model. On the other hand, when crossing the influencers followed with but of an influencer promoted product, there is a clear relationship. In the category of individuals who have not bought an influencer promoted product, the only observations surpassing 50 followed influencers are outliers. However, within these individuals who have bought a product, the box plot is more spread out. There is no clear relationship between the number of influencers followed on social media and the involuntary influence one is subject to. When it comes to voluntary influence, however, we can see a clearer relationship between the number of influencers followed and the purchase of promoted products.
Now for some conclusions. Our dataset was biased by age, gender, geography, and ideology, so it can't be considered universally representative. But even so, our analysis shows some clear general tendencies. For example, the tendency shows that you're more influenced by social media the more influencers you follow, and younger age groups generally follow more influencers than the old ones. At the same time, there's a tendency by influencers to promote the same prevalent, socially accepted beauty ideals, which line up with those that blog Elates had analyzed on Instagram. However, some assumptions like women spend more money on their appearance weren't true, but a social misjudgment. This can be explained by the fact we relied on prejudice or by our dataset being unrepresentative. With more data, we could have had different results. We also need to think that this topic is more complex than a numerical value, so this survey doesn't fully reflect the reality of it.